All right, so picture this. You've just touched down in a brand new city. You know, your itinerary is jam-packed with all these amazing places you want to see, and you're ready to dive right in.
Yeah.
But the second you step out into those bustling streets, it hits you. You have absolutely no clue where you are
Oh, yeah.
or how to get to that incredible cafe everyone keeps raving about.
It's amazing, isn't it, how quickly that initial excitement of exploring can turn into like a wave of panic, like, wait, where am I?
Totally.
But it's not just about, finding your way around a physical place,
Yeah.
right? We're always kind of navigating towards goals in life too, like careers, relationships, personal growth.
Yeah.
And just like in that unfamiliar city, we need a good sense of direction to reach those destinations as well.
Exactly. And that's why today we're doing a deep dive into the art of giving and receiving directions in English.
Right.
So you can navigate any situation with confidence, whether you're exploring a new city or, mapping out your future.
What I find really fascinating about this is how this seemingly simple skill actually taps into some pretty deep cognitive processes,
Whoa,
When we give directions, we're not just spitting out a list of streets.
right.
We're engaging in like spatial reasoning, memory, even a little bit of storytelling, I think.
Ooh, I like that storytelling. And speaking of stories, our source material for this deep dive is actually structured like a really fun English learning podcast.
Nice.
It has vocabulary lessons, dialogues, cultural insights, even a hilarious anecdote about one of the hosts getting completely lost in downtown Toronto.
Oh man, sounds very relatable. It's a good reminder that even the most experienced travelers can get disoriented sometimes.
For sure.
Which really highlights the importance of, brushing up on these directional skills.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so this source material jumps right in with the essential vocabulary for giving directions, the building blocks, if you will. We've got the classics like turn left, turn right, go straight,
Yeah, but what's interesting is they emphasize that it's not just about the individual words.
Yeah.
It's about using phrases that add context and precision. For example, instead of just saying turn left, you might say take a left at the second traffic light or make a left just after the bakery.
Oh, yeah.
Those extra details can really help to create a clearer picture for the person you're guiding.
Totally. And they also highlight the power of landmarks. Instead of just saying turn left at the 3rd Street, you could say something like turn left at the street with the giant red sculpture.
Right.
Our brains latch onto those visual cues much more easily than like abstract street names,
For sure.
And it makes the directions way more memorable.
There's actually a scientific basis for this. Our brains are actually wired to remember images and spatial relationships better than abstract concepts.
Oh, wow.
So landmarks really tap into that natural ability to visualize and create a mental map, which is crucial for effective wayfinding.
So it's not just about making directions more user-friendly, it's actually about working with the way our brains are wired.
Exactly.
That's super interesting. And speaking of user-friendly, they also talk a lot about the importance of including distance and time in your directions.
Right. And that is where it gets particularly interesting because the concept of distance can be quite subjective and culturally influenced. For example, in some cultures, people might think in terms of walking time, while others might use landmarks or even the position of the sun as reference points.
That's such a good point. Our source actually dedicates a whole section to cultural differences in wayfinding, which we'll definitely get into later.
Okay, cool.
But before we jump ahead too far, let's loop back to this idea of distance and time.
Okay.
They specifically mention the word blocks.
Ah, yes, the notorious block.
Yes.
This seemingly simple unit of measurement can cause all sorts of confusion, especially for people who are unfamiliar with the grid system common in North American cities.
Oh, yeah, I can totally see that. What might seem like a quick hop to a local could feel like a marathon for someone used to different urban layouts.
Exactly. And it's a great example of how even seemingly straightforward directions can be impacted by cultural assumptions and just different ways of understanding space.
Okay, so we've covered the basic vocabulary, the importance of landmarks, and the potential pitfalls of blocks.
Right.
Where does this source material take us next?
Well, after laying down this foundational knowledge, they take us on kind of a virtual field trip, so to speak.
Oh, cool.
They present a series of dialogues where people are asking for and giving directions in all sorts of different situations.
Woo! So we get to see these words and phrases in action.
Yes, exactly.
I'm guessing they also point out some common mistakes that people make along the way.
You bet. And they do it in a way that's both informative and entertaining.
Yeah.
They actually use humor to highlight these blunders,
Oh, nice.
which makes the learning process much more engaging and less intimidating.
I love that Learning a new language, especially something as practical as giving directions, can feel a little daunting sometimes.
Yeah,
So injecting some humor into the mix definitely makes it feel a lot more approachable.
absolutely. And they don't just point out the mistakes. You know, they offer solutions and alternative phrases to help listeners avoid those pitfalls.
So they're giving us the tools, the vocabulary, and now the real-world examples. This is starting to feel like a pretty comprehensive toolkit for navigating the world, wouldn't you say?
It really is, and it highlights something that I think is often overlooked in language learning,
What's that?
the importance of cultural awareness.
Hmm.
Because you see, giving directions isn't just about mastering grammar and vocabulary.
Mhm.
It's also about understanding the unspoken rules and expectations that shape communication in different cultures.
That's a great point. Even something as seemingly simple as pointing can be perceived differently depending on where you are in the world.
Exactly. And that's why the source material goes beyond just the mechanics of language. They
Yeah.
actually delve into these cultural nuances, which is where things start to get really fascinating.
Okay, I am officially hooked. So before we dive into those cultural depths, let's take a quick pause and recap what we've covered so far.
Okay.
We've got our basic vocabulary, the power of landmarks, the importance of clear and concise language, and the realization that even blocks can be a tricky concept.
We have, and we've also gotten a glimpse of how all of this comes together in real-world conversations, complete with common mistakes and helpful tips for avoiding them.
Sounds like we're well on our way to becoming expert navigators.
Yes.
But stay tuned, because in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to explore those cultural differences and how they can impact the way we give and receive directions.
That's good.
This is where things get really interesting, so don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the art of giving and receiving directions. We left off talking about how something as seemingly simple as giving directions can be influenced by cultural differences.
Right. What exactly does that look like in practice?
Well, think about it this way. Every culture has its own unique way of understanding and interacting with space.
Okay.
Some cultures might prioritize precise measurements and cardinal directions, while others might rely more on relative landmarks and just a general sense of direction.
So someone who's used to navigating by street names and compass directions might find themselves completely lost in a culture that uses landmarks like the old banyan tree or the house with the blue door.
Exactly. And it's not just about the landmarks themselves. It's about the whole way of thinking about space. For example, in some cultures, it's common to give directions based on the position of the sun, which of course changes throughout the day.
Whoa, that's mind-blowing. I can only imagine how confusing that would be for someone who's used to a fixed north, south, east, west system.
It definitely highlights the importance of being aware of these cultural differences and approaching any communication with a sense of curiosity and open-mindedness.
Our source material actually shares a really interesting anecdote about this. They talk about a situation where someone was trying to give directions to a tourist in a rural village, and they kept referring to landmarks that seemed completely random to the outsider. Things like the place where the old well used to be, or the field where we saw the fox last spring.
Ah, yes, those hyper-local landmarks that hold meaning for people within that specific community, but might as well be invisible to someone from the outside. It's a great example of how culture shapes our perception of the world, even down to the way we give directions.
So what does all of this mean for us as language learners and global citizens? It sounds like we need to go beyond just memorizing vocabulary and grammar rules.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
about developing a deeper cultural awareness, being sensitive to different ways of understanding the world, and being willing to adapt our communication style accordingly.
It's like that saying, don't just learn the language, learn the culture. Because language is so much more than just words. It's a reflection of history, values, beliefs, and the way people perceive the world around them.
Beautifully put. And, this idea of cultural awareness is not just about avoiding misunderstandings or faux pas. It's also about opening ourselves up to new ways of seeing things, expanding our perspectives, and enriching our understanding of the human experience.
Okay, I'm totally on board with that. So let's say we're traveling to a new country and we want to be as prepared as possible to navigate these cultural differences. What are some practical tips we can keep in mind?
Well, first and foremost, I'd say do your research. Before you even set foot in a new place, spend some time learning about the local customs and communication styles.
So beyond just learning basic phrases like hello and thank you, we should also try to understand things like how people typically give directions, what gestures are considered polite or rude, and how direct or indirect communication tends to be.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask questions. If you're unsure about something, whether it's the meaning of a gesture or the best way to ask for directions, just politely ask someone.
That's such a good point. Most people are happy to help, especially if they see that you're making an effort to understand their culture. And who knows, you might even learn something new and fascinating along the way.
Absolutely. And, this idea of asking questions is not just about getting the information you need. It's also about showing respect
Yeah.
and building connections with people from different cultures. It's saying, I'm interested in your way of life and I'm willing to learn from you.
I love that. It's like turning the whole experience into a cultural exchange rather than just a transactional interaction.
Precisely. And that's where the real magic of travel and cross-cultural communication lies.
Yeah.
It's about those moments of connection, those shared experiences that broaden our horizons and remind us of our shared humanity.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired. But let's not forget the practical side of things. We've talked a lot about the challenges of giving and receiving directions in different cultures, but what about the role of technology? Surely GPS devices and smartphone apps have made things a lot easier, right?
You're absolutely right. Technology has revolutionized the way we navigate the world. With a few taps on our phones, we can access detailed maps, turn-by-turn directions, and even real-time traffic updates.
Remember those days of unfolding those giant paper maps, trying to decipher cryptic symbols and constantly second-guessing if you were going the right way?
I can practically hear the crinkling of the map and feel the weight of that guidebook in my hand.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, technology has made navigation much more efficient and accessible, especially for people who might struggle with traditional map reading or language barriers.
That's such an important point. Technology can be a great equalizer, helping to bridge communication gaps and empower people to explore the world with greater confidence.
But even with all the advancements in GPS and mapping technology, there's still something to be said for the art of giving and receiving directions in the traditional sense.
I totally agree. There's a certain satisfaction, a sense of accomplishment that comes from successfully navigating a new place without relying on technology.
It's like solving a puzzle, using your wits and your intuition to piece together the clues and find your way. And let's not forget the serendipitous discoveries that often come with getting a little bit lost.
Oh, absolutely. Those unexpected detours, those hidden gems you would never have stumbled upon if you were glued to your phone screen, those are the moments that truly make a journey memorable.
They remind us that sometimes the most rewarding experiences come from venturing off the beaten path and embracing the unknown.
So it sounds like the key is to find a balance, to use technology as a tool, but not let it completely replace our own sense of adventure and our ability to connect with the world around us.
Beautifully said. This idea of balance actually ties in perfectly with a theme we've been touching on throughout this deep dive, the importance of active listening and communication. Because even with the most sophisticated GPS device, if you're not paying attention to your surroundings and engaging with the people around you, you're likely to miss out on some of the most enriching aspects of the journey.
That's so true. It's like the difference between just hearing directions and actually listening to them, processing the information, and creating that mental map in your head.
And let's not forget the importance of nonverbal communication. Body language, facial expressions, gestures, these can all play a significant role in how effectively we convey and receive directions, especially when language barriers or cultural differences are involved.
Think about it. A simple nod of the head can convey understanding, a furrowed brow can signal confusion, and a pointed finger can clarify direction. These nonverbal cues can often be more powerful than words themselves.
And what's fascinating is that nonverbal communication can vary significantly across cultures. Gestures that are considered polite or helpful in one culture might be interpreted as rude or dismissive in another.
For example, in some cultures, it's considered impolite to point directly at someone, while in others, it's a perfectly acceptable way to indicate direction. And eye contact, which is often seen as a sign of respect and attentiveness in Western cultures, can be perceived as aggressive or confrontational in some Eastern cultures.
It's a reminder that cultural awareness goes beyond just language. It's about understanding the nuances of nonverbal communication and adapting our behavior accordingly.
So what does this all mean for us? Well, first and foremost, it highlights the importance of being mindful of our own nonverbal communication and ensuring it's aligned with our intentions. Are we projecting confidence and engagement? Are we sending signals of confusion or disinterest?
And secondly, it underscores the need to be observant and respectful of the nonverbal cues of others, especially those from different cultural backgrounds. Pay attention to their gestures, their facial expressions, their tone of voice. These subtle cues can provide valuable insights into their thoughts and feelings, even when words fail.
And remember, when it comes to nonverbal communication, context is key. A gesture that might have one meaning in a casual setting could have a completely different interpretation in a formal or professional environment.
So be aware of your surroundings, observe the behavior of others, and be willing to adapt your own communication style to fit the situation.
And if you're ever unsure about the meaning of a particular gesture or expression, don't hesitate to ask for clarification. It's always better to err on the side of caution and avoid potential misunderstandings.
Absolutely. Communication is a collaborative process, and both parties need to be actively involved in ensuring that the message is conveyed clearly and respectfully.
Welcome back. We've been on quite a journey exploring this whole world of giving and receiving directions.
We have.
It's amazing how much depth there is to this seemingly simple act, you know?
Yeah, it really is. We've gone from like the nitty-gritty of vocabulary and landmarks to the fascinating world of cultural differences and nonverbal cues.
And now for the grand finale of our deep dive.
Okay.
I thought it would be fun to take everything we've learned
Yeah.
and see how it applies to some real-life situations, you know?
I like where you're going with this.
Because after all, the ultimate goal is to be able to use these skills not just to find like physical locations,
Right.
but to navigate all sorts of challenges and opportunities in life. So let's start with something that I think a lot of us can relate to, planning a get-together with friends.
Okay.
So you've got this amazing rooftop party in mind, but how do you make sure your friends, especially those who are new to the city, can actually find their way there?
The classic party invitation dilemma.
Yeah.
This is where those clear and concise directions really come into play. You want to think about your audience, you know. Are they arriving by car, public transport, maybe even bikes? Tailor your directions accordingly.
Right. Like, don't just say, it's near the park. Give specific landmarks they can easily spot, like look for the tall building with the colorful mural and it's just across the street. Oh, and those online mapping links that you can just pop right into the Invite Lifesavers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Visual aids are your friend. And, you know, thinking back to what we discussed about cultural differences, if, you know, some of your friends are from cultures where directions are typically more landmark-based, you can really cater to that in your instructions.
Yeah.
It's all about anticipating that potential confusion and making it as easy as possible for everyone to find their way.
And let's be real, even with the best directions, sometimes things go awry. You know, a friend calls lost and flustered.
Yeah.
This is where that empathy we talked about comes in. Instead of getting frustrated, you know, put yourself in their shoes, calmly guide them back on track. Maybe even offer to hop on a quick video call to help them visually identify a landmark.
It's a great example of how the principles of giving good directions, clarity, empathy, anticipating needs, are really just good communication skills, period.
Okay, so we've mastered the art of directing friends to our legendary rooftop party.
Right?
Now let's level up to a more professional setting.
Okay.
Imagine you're leading a project at work, one with multiple moving parts, and a team that needs clear direction to stay on track.
Yeah, this is where those mental maps we talked about earlier become really essential.
Mm-hmm.
Not just for you as the leader, but for everyone on the team.
Mm-hmm.
It's about breaking down a complex task into smaller, more manageable steps, and then clearly communicating those steps to your team.
Like, instead of just saying, let's get this website redesign done by next month, you'd lay out a clear roadmap like, okay, week 1, we're focusing on user research. Week 2, wireframes. Week 3. Get the idea.
And remember how powerful visual aids can be? Don't underestimate the power of a good flowchart timeline, or even just sketching things out on a whiteboard. It helps everyone to visualize that path forward and stay aligned.
And it's also about regularly checking in, making sure everyone understands their directions for their part of the project, and encouraging them to speak up if they're feeling lost or need clarification, just like we wouldn't hesitate to ask for help if we were literally lost, right?
Exactly. And creating that environment where people feel comfortable asking for help is crucial for any leader, whether you're guiding a team project or literally guiding someone through a new city.
So we've tackled parties, projects. You know, it's striking me that this whole concept of giving and receiving directions goes even deeper than that.
Oh, what do you mean?
Well, we talk about finding our way in life all the time, you know, figuring out career paths, navigating relationships, making big life decisions. It's like we're all constantly searching for those metaphorical landmarks and directions to guide us towards where we want to go.
That's a profound observation. And it speaks to a larger truth about how the principles we've been discussing apply far beyond literal maps and streets.
Yeah.
It's about developing that internal compass, that ability to set goals, break them down into actionable steps, and course correct along the way.
And being open to those detours that life throws our way, sometimes those unexpected turns lead to the most amazing discoveries.
Couldn't agree more. And remember, just like when we're navigating a new city, it's okay to ask for help on our life journey too.
Yeah.
Mentors, friends, family, they can all offer valuable directions and support as we navigate the, complexities of life.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the art of giving and receiving directions, it seems like we've uncovered something much bigger. A roadmap not just for navigating physical space, but for navigating life itself.
Beautifully put. And I hope our listeners feel empowered to not only find their way around any city, but to confidently chart their own course through life, embracing the journey with all its twists, turns, and unexpected detours.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.